Chapter 6. The Elements. After a short while, Wu directed everyone to sit down in a circle on the floor, since there were no chairs available. Keaton had the candlestick, glowing brightly in the dim morning light, and Wu asked her to put it in the middle of the room so they could all see better. Then he took a deep breath. He looked from Kai, shaken and breathing heavily from fear and adrenaline, to Cole, tense with anticipation, to Jay, eyes wide with excitement and confusion, to Zane, silent and unreadable. "Would somebody please tell me what's going on?" Kai suddenly asked. His voice was shaky and hoarse, but he commanded authority in a stern sort of way. "I suppose we ought to start at the beginning," said Wu, looking at Kai. "This is the Yamadera Monastery outside of Ninjago City." "Ninjago City?" Kai blurted. "Yes, we brought you here for your safety." "But I need to save my sister. She's in terrible danger." "And how are you planning on rescuing her?" said Wu sharply. "By storming the undead citadel and defeating the entire Skulkin army single-handedly?" Kai went silent. "We will help you save your sister, but we have more pressing matters to attend to first." "So we're saving a girl?" Jay asked, his eyes rising. "Is she hot?" "Jay!" Cole groaned, elbowing him. "I just want to know what we're getting ourselves into," said Jay. No one in the room seemed to be very convinced, least of all Kai, who was now glaring at him. After a moment, Jay turned to look at Kai and asked, "Does she like blue?" "Back off!" Kai growled. Just then, Wu let out a very intentional cough to regain their attention. "The reason I have brought you all here, the mission I had mentioned, is of the utmost secrecy. You may not breathe a word of what you hear and see outside of this company. Understood?" Kai looked at the old man and swallowed hard. His mind still felt foggy from the drug that had knocked him out, and his eyes felt weary in the dim candlelight, but he knew that he was way in over his head. "I am Master Wu, tactical advisor to the Imperial Army, and ex-captain of His Majesty's personal guard, and I need your help. Garmadon's forces have not moved from their stronghold at the Jade River, and our spies have informed us as to the reason. Garmadon is looking for special weapons. Weapons that would assure his victory." That sent a shiver through Kai's body. What kind of weapons? A bomb? A missile? Living in Harper Vale, a place totally governed by Garmadon, their only hope had been the Empire. Was that hope falsely placed, he wondered? "They are called the 4 Golden Weapons of Spinjitzu. They were created long ago by a very powerful person, and each one has the ability to control an element. The Scythe of Quakes, the Nunchucks of Lightning, the Daggers of Ice, and the Sword of Fire. It is said that their power is so great that if a man should hold even one, it would surely destroy him. Therefore I cannot wield them. However, there are those who, in theory, would be able to control this power. They are those already born with the elements inside of them." "You mean elemental powers?" Jay cried. "Not so loud," Wu said with a frown. "Very few know of the existence of the elementals, and we must strive to keep it that way." Jay looked as though he was going to ask another question, but Cole beat him to it. "You mean all of us? We were all born with an elemental power?" he asked. "Yes," said Wu. "Zane, Master of Ice, Kai, Master of Fire, Jay, Master of Lightning, and Cole, Master of Earth." Every eye in the room widened. "Lightning?" Jay squealed, attempting to hold back his enthusiasm. "But wait, he just used his power, and she has, water powers, so how come we haven't used our powers?" He looked at Cole and Zane as he said it, but the looks on their faces told him everything he needed to know. "Wait, you guys already knew about your powers?" Cole looked down at his hands solemnly. "Yeah," he replied. "For a while now. But all that time, I can't believe I wasn't the only one." He looked around the room at everyone with an expression of bewilderment mixed with curiosity, hidden beneath his bushy, furrowed eyebrows. "It comes from within you," Wu explained. "It is a part of you. And as for your question, Jay, I do not have the answer. In truth, I know very little about the way your individual powers behave, and it will be mostly up to you to figure out how to control them, although I will offer what little knowledge I do have. Wu closed his eyes and reached out one of his old, weathered hands. Suddenly, a light began to shine in his palm. Small at first, but it quickly grew to the size of a baseball. Other smaller balls of light swarmed around the first one like electrons in atoms, until, with a final pulse, the light faded and a porcelain teacup was all that remained. Wu's hand began to shake terribly, and he pulled it back toward him very suddenly, but he kept the cup out where they could see. You're like us?" Jay asked. "In a way," the master said, breathing a cough or two. "However, my ability, as you can see, is not quite elemental. It is an ancient power, passed on to me from my father, the power of creation." He might as well have said, "I am Emperor Meiji." Every single child in Ninjago knew of the stories of the first Spinjitzu master, wielder of the powers of creation and destruction, creator of Ninjago, whether they believed them or not. So the only thing Wu could have meant to say is that he was the son of the first Spinjitzu master. Everyone's jaw dropped, at least a little. There was stunned silence for several minutes before Jay found his voice again. "What the hey do you need us for, then?" he asked. "Also, do we need to, bow or something?" Wu chuckled. "There is no need. I am still just a man. In fact, more than my father was. My mother was mortal, after all." He paused, lost in an old memory. "But I'm not my father. My powers are minuscule compared to his, especially in my old age, and even he required the aid of the golden weapons to create Ninjago." Again, there was silence. The only people unfazed by this new information were Anne and Keaton. They had never known the whole story, but they were very much aware of his lineage. It was something that always made Anne go rigid in his presence. All at once, though none of them realized what the others were feeling, they all felt that strange tingling in the backs of their heads again. Its humming seemed to calm their nerves a decent bit, to the point where they could talk again. "So, you're basically a demigod?" Cole asked. Wu sighed. "I suppose that is one term for it." "You must be at least 1,000 years old!" Jay cried. "Actually, it should make him closer to 700 years old," Zane said simply. "Very good, Zane," said Wu. Again they stared in wonder. "And the last thing you should know, the reason why Garmadon is such a threat, the reason why an old man like me would pull himself out of retirement to fight, is to stop my brother from destroying everything I hold dear." He paused to let them all take in this new information. "As I inherited part of my father's power, so did he. Garmadon is my other half, the wielder of destruction." This was the last straw. Kai was sure that he was dreaming now. That was the only logical explanation. "I think my brain is going to explode," he mumbled. "Ditto," said Jay, a little less convincingly. Okay, let me get this straight. You and Lord Garmadon are the children of the first Spinjitzu master, and you're both trying to get to these golden weapons before the other guy does? Correct. And you need us to help you because we can actually use the weapons even though they're stupid powerful, Jay went on. Also correct. Well, I just have one thing to say. "Sign me up! Let's do this!" Jay shouted. "When do I get to throw lightning?" "Easy now," Wu warned. "Before accepting, you must understand the great responsibility that has been bestowed upon you. This will be no easy feat. In fact, it will be the most dangerous thing any of you have ever faced in your entire lives. If it liberates my home from the constant threat of soldiers, I will join you." Everyone turned to Zane with surprise. He seemed to be the most suspicious of the group, and yet he was the first to commit himself to a life-threatening cause. "I'm still in, no matter what, Master Wu," Jay continued. "This is the coolest thing that has ever happened to me in my whole life." Cole looked down at his hands for a moment. "This is the only worthwhile thing I'll probably ever do with my life," he said solemnly. "I'm in." All eyes turned to Kai. He fiddled with the sash on his robe for a moment. "Look, all I care about is saving my sister. So if you guys are actually gonna help me do that, I guess it wouldn't kill me to help you out," he said, trying not to look any of them in the eyes. It might," Jay piped up. "You did hear the part about it being life-threatening, didn't you?" Cole elbowed him playfully. Kai narrowed his eyes. "I guess I'm in too." Wu nodded stoically and stroked his beard. "Very well. You've all made up your minds. Now on to—" "Wait!" Jay interrupted. "I just remembered I have another question." "Yes," Wu sighed. "How are we gonna find the weapons before Garmadon does?" "Well, that was precisely what we needed to discuss next. You see, after realizing that the weapons were far too powerful for the people of Ninjago, my father hid them away in the farthest reaches of the land and left a single map to find them." "So we find the map, we find the weapons," Cole guessed. "Actually, we already have the map," said Wu, and he turned to Kai. "What?" he asked suddenly. He didn't like the way everybody was looking at him. "My father did not have many close friends. One of the only people he ever trusted was your grandfather," Wu explained. Kai breathed. "He knew my grandfather?" "For a time, yes. I don't suppose you ever met him?" asked Wu. Kai turned away slightly. "No." Wu frowned. "Well, let's hope this works then." He rose from his mat and took a step closer to Kai. "What are you doing?" he asked as Wu offered him his hand. When Kai took it, he lifted him up to his feet. "The map we need is no ordinary map. To ensure that it never fell into the wrong hands, my father implanted the directions into your grandfather's mind," Wu explained. Kai's eyes widened. "If I may." Wu raised his hand and gently laid his palm on Kai's forehead. Suddenly, it felt like he was being pulled backward or falling down into a deep, dark abyss. There were flashes of images, most of them bright yellow and orange, flying sparks, campfires, dazzling sunsets, even a dress his mother had worn once. Then they stopped with such force Kai was surprised that he hadn't fallen over. And there it was, the image of the map, floating in the air. The memory became so clear in his mind now. He had always known the locations of those weapons, and yet... Kai opened his eyes and sucked in a sharp breath of air as Wu lowered his hand, and they were both launched back into reality. "How did you do that?" Kai asked, shaking. "I have more than one trick up my sleeve," said Wu. "My father was truly brilliant, though. To hide a map within the subconscious of a mind, and then have that same map pass from generation to generation. Truly brilliant." Kai sat back down and put his face in his hands. "Hey, are you okay?" Cole leaned over to ask. "I'm done. I can't take any more weirdness for today," Kai muttered, sounding almost on the verge of a breakdown. "I'm cold, I don't remember how I got here, and I smell like wet dog." "Make that wet dog with a side of smoke," Jay mentioned. Wu came over to Kai and laid a hand on his shoulder. "You should get some rest. In fact, we should all get some rest. The sun is rising, and we head for the Caves of Despair tomorrow." Kai finally let the fatigue he'd been holding back take over. He had been working in the blacksmith shop almost non-stop for days. Then Nia was taken away, and now all this. Cole had to help him to his feet, and all the boys walked him to his room, which was just across from Jay's. They helped him out of the robe, which Jay took back immediately, and then laid him down on his sleeping mat. The moment his head hit the pillow, Kai fell into a very deep, restful sleep. Cole made sure to close the door as quietly as he could, and then turned to the others who were still standing in the hall. "Some morning, huh?" he said quietly. Jay and Zane nodded. "And I guess we're all elementals." "Yeah, but apparently you guys have already used your powers?" Jay asked. "Yeah, you haven't?" said Cole, his brow furrowed with confusion. "Do I look like the living lightning rod?" Jay countered. "No, you look more like a white-faced monkey," said Zane without a hint of sarcasm. Jay turned and gave him a bizarre look. "You know what? I don't have the energy for this right now," he said as he rubbed his eyes. Yeah, same, Cole said, yawning. See you guys in a few hours. See ya. Mm-hmm. They all retreated to their rooms and tried to regain the sleep they had lost, but none of them slept more soundly than Kai.
Hello everybody, thank you so much for watching, and special thanks and shout out to Brooke and Zappy, who so graciously drew the pictures for today's episode. Thank you guys so much, I never could have done it without you. So I hope you all give them a very big round of applause. More Ninjago content is on the way. I can't say for certain when, but, soon-ish. My goal is to get through the first book, and then I can move on to the second book, and then we won't have to keep on waiting, because this has taken, frankly, way too long, and I should have had this out a long time ago. Alright, have a great rest of your day.